So it's finding what works for you. And to your point, a high net worth individual probably, because I've been contacted by many of them,
Hmm.
probably can afford advice and get
Right.
somebody to come in and help them
Hmm.
to reinforce and secure their digital world.
Right.
And that's done from the broadband provider, from setting up their Wi-Fi access point,
Hmm.
um, password security, password managers, authenticators,
Hmm.
online banking. Looking at the big picture and securing everything together really does make a big difference. So just
That's
doing any
good advice.
one random act here and there, it'll do something, but it won't
Mhm.
reinforce the whole security. Because
Right.
why? A cyber criminal, if they want to get you,
Hmm.
if they want to get you, if they want to get me, they're going to do it.
Hello, and welcome to the Smarter Online Safety Show. I'm your host, Jocelyn King, the Queen of Online Safety. Hello, and welcome to the show. I am so excited to have you here today, and we've got a great guest for you. My guest today knows what it's like to be on both sides of a hack. Scott Schober is president and CEO of BV Systems, a wireless security company that his family has run in New Jersey for over 50 years. He's a cybersecurity expert you've seen on CNN, Bloomberg, and Good Morning America. And he's also been hacked repeatedly. Criminals drained his business financial account, hijacked his credit card and debit cards, and his social media account, and knocked his website offline. He turned that ordeal into three best-selling books: Hacked Again, Cybersecurity is Everybody's Business, and Senior Cyber, which is for seniors. And he's on a mission to help the rest of us stay safe. Scott, wow, what an ordeal. And we can't wait to talk to you about it. Welcome to the Smarter Online Safety Show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. Look forward to a great discussion.
Yeah. Now, everyone has a personal experience and reason for getting into cyber safety. I asked this of all the guests, and some, it's they came out of the military and were doing cyber there, or they had an interest in tech, or they had a family member who got hacked or something. But you really have a story. Can you share that with our listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, a number of years ago, I found myself just presenting and educating a lot about our company and our products and things like that. And most of our products are they're based around wireless technology, different test tools and things like that. So I found
Mhm.
the more that I went out and presented at small conferences and things like that, the security implications and aspects always came up. So I really started doing research and learning more and more about how insecure our phones are and computers and the internet as a whole, and started sharing basic tips and things like that. And at one point, I found the more I started to share and educate, the more questions I got. And it kind of started to grow a small little audience and got more and more recognition. Well, at one point, I was getting more and more requests, and I found myself in a pickle because I realized I had a target on my back.
Mhm.
And the bad guys, the cyber criminals, want to basically silence people. The more that you educate, the more that it hurts their business. So
Mhm.
they started going after me. And I honestly didn't even know it at first. I just thought these were a series of maybe coincidences or just poor decisions on my part, which in part it was, I guess, in fairness, or weak security practices that I didn't even think of or wasn't even aware of. But it kind of started when I had a credit card compromised,
Mm.
which happens to all of us. No big
Right.
deal. We know what happens. We report it. We dispute
Hmm.
the charges, get a new card issued, so on and so forth. But it was weird because I had my credit card compromised, then the debit card compromised, and then it happened to the business also. So it was kind of like four cards all at the same time,
Mm.
which just seems impossible. So went
Mhm.
through all the process, got the money back, so on and so forth, got new cards issued, and shortly after I had my Twitter account taken over and crazy messages being posted. I'm like, what is going on? Did the usual, reported it, changed the password, added multi-factor authentication, kind of went through the process everybody goes through. It happens. No big deal. We have an online store. Had problems with that. Suddenly we're getting repeated DDoS attacks. The store's not working. We're not getting orders through. Working
Now
with,
we have listeners who may not know what a
yeah.
DDoS attack is. So
Oh,
just
sure,
briefly,
yeah.
what is that? Hmm.
Absolutely. So DDoS attack, just think of it almost like flooding your website with junk. So now you can't
Hmm.
distinguish what's a legitimate transaction, somebody trying to buy a product on your store just from bots or repeated attacks where somebody's just weighing your store down so it doesn't work. It
Hmm.
just stops your website basically from
Right.
working. It kills a business. And at the time we were
Hmm.
doing a fair amount of commerce. We're doing a lot more today, but that really hurts you as a small business. That's your lifeline. You're
Right.
sending everybody traffic to your business. When it stops working, it's like, oh no.
Hmm.
And then finally, I knew I could see clearly it was being a targeted attack as I started asking friends and colleagues, what is going on? I came in one Monday morning, get on the computer as I always do, check the bank and move money around, do whatever, check for incoming wire transfers, and I saw $65,000 plus, boom, vanished out of the checking account, and I'm like, what is going on? And
Hmm.
I called my partner, asked him, nobody knew what's going on, so I instantly called the bank, got the fraud department involved. Investigation ensued and found out it became, a lot more steps and a lot more involved than I ever would have thought of.
Hmm.
Documents, paperwork, emails, phone calls, became federal investigation because it was above $50,000.
Hmm.
I reached out to some friends at the time that was an Israeli cybersecurity group that was really good in the dark web crawling and stuff. So I shared some of
Hmm.
the information of all these series of things that I've been dealing with, and
Hmm.
they tracked it down to some notorious cyber criminals, and they were touting and bragging how they hacked myself and other cyber security educators and things like that. It's almost
Hmm.
like a game of bragging rights that they're
Yes.
able to monkey around and mess our lives up. So in one sense, I felt kind of flattered that I had a little bit of recognition that maybe I'm doing some good and they want to just stifle the conversation from me
It's a
helping.
dubious honor
Yeah, it was
to
kind
be
of
it.
kind
Yeah.
of backwards
Yeah.
congratulations almost, and I didn't know how to take it. But in the process of all that, and there's a whole lot more that comes afterward,
Hmm.
because it never stops, honestly. I learned a lot, and I started to
Hmm.
realize, you know what? None of us are really 100% safe. If we're
Hmm.
using a debit card, if we're using a credit card, if we're making online purchases, if we're using online banking, there's a lot of things that we take for granted and we assume we're safe because everybody says you're safe and it's okay to
Right.
do this and it's secure and so on and so forth. And maybe we lull ourselves into a sense of security, and standing back, looking at myself as running a business and dealing as we migrated more and more into security products, I was kind of embarrassed. And I think that's something that probably everybody that I talk to, small business owners, or if they're a victim of ransomware attack, and I'm sure you talk to a lot of people as well, when
Right.
they're compromised, it affects you emotionally.
Yes.
and
Yes.
and sometimes you have to almost deal with your own feelings, and you're
Mhm.
you're you're kind of hesitant, what should I share or what shouldn't I share, and not fully always knowing what happened and what transpired. It's hard to do that, just like when we see a company is the victim of a data breach. It seems like there's always this long period of time before we even hear about it,
Mhm.
let alone understand how it all happened and unfolds and what they did about it. Same thing when it happens to a person or a small company, it takes some processing time.
Right.
So I'm sympathetic to others when I hear that, oh, Scott, you won't believe it. My computer was hacked. I think I got ransom. My whole company's down. What do I
Mhm.
do? And those type of things. So it makes you think and reevaluate a lot of different things. And I think it's good. From my
Right.
perspective, I was at the point, and I've started going from speaking at small conferences to doing more television interviews, radio
Mhm.
interviews. And at that point, right around when that happened and shortly thereafter, I remember coming off, it was a Bloomberg interview. I remember it clearly. I sat down to have a bite to eat and drink just to kind of cool down after a TV interview. And then I got a
Mhm.
call from the Associated Press, and they said, hey, is this Scott Schober? And I'm like, who is this? And I'm like, yes. And they're like, hey, we heard your company was compromised and you were hacked and targeted. I was like, oh, who'd you hear that from? And they wouldn't share their source, of course. Would you
Mhm.
be willing to go on record and talk about it? And I was like, yeah. I said, we're a wireless and security company, and I really would hate to do that. And then I thought about it. I said, I'll tell you what, if you let me tell the story and my misfortunes, my mistakes, but what I've learned from it, so other people kind of don't traverse the same path,
Mhm.
I'll go on the record. But you got to make sure you run it through me and just don't go get creative there in your editorial. And they
Yes,
did, and they
they
were
did.
true to
That was good.
that. They
Mhm.
interviewed me, they shared it with me, then it went out there. And what I didn't realize is the story wasn't like a little small story, it really went national.
Right.
And I guess when it goes national, other people hear about it, there's more notoriety, the phone's ringing,
Mhm.
people are calling, friends are reaching out. So suddenly this kind of embarrassing situation turned into overnight this wow, I can't believe what happened, but I read your story and it was really interesting. It helped me learn that I got to use multi-factor authentication, or hey, I got
Right.
to be more careful with passwords, or I got, everybody had a little lesson learned that they were taking out of my interview. And I felt, you know what, maybe this is doing some
That
good.
was making it worth it. Yeah, I've shared my
Yeah.
story with on stages and in my book and
Mhm.
with a lot of the listeners here. And I have to say the hardest part was that period between when I realized what was happening and the everything from the shame, the fear.
Mhm.
It's very hard to just accept reality. Like our brains are designed to help cushion us in trauma, and it's trauma. And then asking for help, feeling like, oh, how did I let this happen? You self, if you're a sane, rational, you know, um, just good human being, you feel shame instead of feeling outrage at at what's happened to you. And it's that victim model that I think helps make cyber criminals so successful because whether that period where people are nervous about reaching out is an hour or a month or a year or
Mhm.
never. When you and I have both met people who have never reported it, never talked to anybody. Sometimes the first time they share it with anybody is when they come up after you or I speak on a stage and say, "Oh my gosh, I have to, I want to tell you something I've never told anybody," and they share it because of all that, and it's very true. That is a real thing, and I'm so glad you're talking about it because when we're sharing that this happens and we normalize it and we take the shame off of it and we just make if this is happening to you, you can protect yourself and you have the right to, be outraged and recover. It normalizes it enough that I think it makes it more accessible for everybody. If I kept finding experts who were telling me what to do to prevent it, but I wasn't having people share that they had gone through it. And the few that did really looked like victims, and you felt sorry for them, and you didn't
Mhm.
this, and most of us we don't want to be victims, we want to be survivors, and recover. And so I think the more that these stories are getting out with the you didn't do anything wrong, you know, um, and then also realizing you need to create a stronger protection system around you. So I'm so glad you did that, and I love your books. They're so good.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. I
Uh,
think
go ahead,
you're,
please.
I just wanted to build on your point because I think it was really brilliant. I think being transparent when you and I and others that have been victims and make mistakes,
Hmm.
we do have stories. And when we share those stories, I think it helps people to some degree relate to it. And what do
Hmm.
I mean by that? In the past, I noticed everybody spoke in technical jargon and throwing out too many cybersecurity terms. In fact, it
Yeah.
started when I mentioned earlier, I talked about a DDoS attack. See, I assume everybody knows what a DDoS attack is. The
Mm-hmm.
same thing when I started talking about wireless security and
Mm-hmm.
cybersecurity, I too was guilty of this, throwing around acronyms because I deal with this every day. You deal
Mm-hmm.
with these things every day, but we need to think that other people um, may feel a little intimidated about it. So when we share our
Right.
story that we're victimized, but to the best of our ability, where we can break it down in normal terms so they can make changes and build some
Mm-hmm.
cyber resilience and layers of security, and they start to understand it. Now suddenly they're empowered. Now
Right.
suddenly they
Exactly.
look at it and say, you know what? I listened to this person on stage and this one over here, and I read this book and this article, and I'm now using multi-factor authentication. Now I'm using
Right.
Authenticator or Password Manager.
Mm-hmm.
They're taking baby steps, but now they feel empowered and they control their security. There's a big difference in that. So I
Mm-hmm.
think hopefully the more you and I and many other experts out there that are sharing our stories of misfortune from time to time,
Mm-hmm.
it's helping build more good guys and empower more people. And I think that that's what it's
Yeah.
all about. That's when I rolled up my sleeve. If I look back years ago when I was in high school, I'll be honest with you, I was the shyest kid in the school. I couldn't stand up in front of a class. I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't present in front of an audience. My nerves, my paranoia, it kind of closes in on you. And I was like very
Mm-hmm.
like this.
Yeah.
Being targeted and attacked maybe helped me come out of my shell. And I had to learn how to get in front of a camera, how to be on great video podcasts like this, or TV and radio, or up on the stage,
Hmm.
how to talk to an audience, how to relate, how to be more
Hmm.
transparent. So, how to write a book, all those things. I'll be honest,
Hmm.
I was probably the worst. So, anybody watching or listening to this, if they say, "Well, I could never do that," yes, you can. You can do anybody. If
Yeah.
I can do it, anybody can do it. It does
Right.
take work. It takes effort, and you can't be afraid. I think you have to be willing to expose yourself, be a little bit vulnerable, and be transparent. Once I got over that and
Right.
not worried about myself and worried about how do I help people, the rest just falls into place and it becomes very natural. I think what you
Right.
and I do, and I think we're doing good, and that's what's really important. Making the cyber criminals work their butts off to try to take money away from good people, make their job hard, make them work at it. If not, get them caught is what the ultimate goal is. It makes you feel
Mhm.
good. We can sleep at night at least.
Right. And I think for the average person listening, if you have been hacked or you've had some kind of minor scam or anything, you don't have to write a book and you don't have to go on shows, but what advice do you have for what they should do right away to get from that fear of embarrassment or whatever, or being shy or whatever it is that's holding them back from seeking help? And what do you see as, let's tell them the reason why it's so important to do it quickly.
Yeah, I think we all are probably a little bit misinformed. We think we're secure. We all have the common phrase. I've said it myself, and I hear people say it all the time. What do I have that's worth stealing? Who's going to get me? I don't have that much money in the bank, or,
Hmm.
why bother? I'm going to get hacked anyway. I hear those phrases all the time over the past decade. However, when you do educate yourself, for me, I went out and bought 20, 30 books on cybersecurity. I started reading. I started watching YouTube videos. I started attending more and more events and learning and talking to people and writing to people and asking questions, being inquisitive to
Hmm.
understand why was I victim here, help me be proactive and prevent it, and helps me educate other people. And I relate a lot of those stories through my book about like when I was younger, when my bicycle was stolen and other compromises and things. The emotional impacts, oftentimes as a child, what we grew up with, that really sticks with us, and what we learn
Right.
from our parents and our peers around us. So, building upon, the way you've learned a security culture, realizing you can change that, your behavior and the way you approach things. I hate to say it now, the way I deal with things, I pretty much trust nobody. I have to
Hmm.
do research ahead of time. I have to vet people. I'm not too quick just to click, link to everybody on LinkedIn. I have a lot of
Right.
people that I'm connected with, but it takes time, it takes effort. So,
Hmm.
um, I think good advice for everybody out there with anything, if they're questioning something, or as you mentioned, if they're a victim of a breach, a hack, slow down, pause, ask questions, do research. Everybody has a confidant. I have a couple close friends. Oftentimes, before they ever click on something, before they move to the next step of an email,
Hmm.
a text they get, I get a quick text or a call. Hey, Scott, can I show you something? I got something a little suspicious.
Right. Yeah.
And that's what's important. So build a small network of trusted confidants that you have,
Hmm.
especially as you get older. I think that's even more imperative that
That's so
that
true.
you don't quickly just click things or take things on because you're embarrassed or whatever.
Hmm.
But having that help just to bounce things off of people. I do it to this day. I,
Right.
nobody's 100% secure. We all need some friends and colleagues that we can bounce ideas off of. We do it in the world of business.
Hmm.
If we're going to buy a house, we bring somebody that knows maybe construction or a house or an inspector.
Hmm.
Same thing true with cyber. Get somebody else there on your side,
That's
and you'll
true.
realize it'll really help you reinforce your security posture.
Right. And it helps you protect and save so much.
Oh yeah.
You brought up a really important thing in there too, also about as you're getting older, and you wrote a book, Senior Cyber. Let's talk a little bit about that because the
Sure.
cybersecurity industry is so focused on building security primarily for large corporations and organizations and government that are so complex, and they don't help individuals, right? That's a different type of cybersecurity for everybody listening. And we're really talking. In fact, even the reason I call this smarter online safety is because nobody wants to read 20 books on cybersecurity, and I did it too, so I understand. But they just they want online safety. And I think one of the biggest problems right now is so many seniors who are trusting and
Mhm.
maybe, and also don't want to be, don't want to feel paranoid and not trust anyone. And so getting that line from going from, well, you don't have to act like a Secret Service agent or something like that, but you do need to, have the same I like to think you have the same caution that you do with strangers that you meet. You wouldn't
Yeah.
just invite anybody into your home who knock up on your door, especially if they look suspicious. You'd you would not open the door after seeing who's there. But yet we do it online all the time. And seniors in particular, they're the highest loss per victim group out there, and they're very underserved around security. So
Absolutely.
what did writing senior cyber show you that, the field keeps missing?
Well, I think originally I kind of stumbled upon writing the book, which is kind of a weird short story of it, but helping my parents at the time, helping my grandparents at the time struggle with just basic email and passwords and security, and they're falling victim for things, and money was lost, and messes.
Mhm.
And in some of that, I share some of the stories there.
Mhm.
Um, I got frustrated. I said, why are they going after them? And obviously, because usually when somebody's a senior, maybe they've built up a nest egg and worked hard all their life and so on and so
Right.
forth. So they're a target automatically. They've got some money in the bank or whatever.
Mhm.
But I found quickly that seniors tend to be trusting. Um, they tend to do things a little bit differently because they didn't grow up in the digital age as maybe I did or my children do, where they could jump on a phone and do something in 2 seconds. So you
Mhm.
have to treat it a little bit different.
Mhm.
Um, and I especially notice a lot of the phone scams, which tend to target seniors, are extremely effective. Why? Um, and I kind of explain this a little bit in senior cyber.
Mhm.
Oftentimes, you have one house phone in your home, it rings, you pick it up and say, "Hello, this is the Schober residence. Can I help you?" It was
Mhm.
natural. You were excited. You'd pick up a phone. It was a
Mhm.
means of communication. You didn't have cell phones and texting and emails and all the other digital things that we use now to communicate or try
Mhm.
to communicate.
Mhm.
So therefore, when a phone rings, seniors tend to pick it up and they
Mhm.
tend to trust the person at the other end. Their
Mhm.
hearing may not be as good, their recollection may be a little bit off. And
Mhm.
anytime somebody, the scammer at the other end, the cyber criminal, once they use that sense of pressure, speed, they push you down a particular path where they're trying to maybe garnish personal information from the senior or fool them into something, a scam, or whatever the case
Right.
may be. Seniors tend to give in a lot more.
Yeah.
Um, and the more I interviewed different seniors and talking to them, I went to assisted living homes and nursing homes and
Mhm.
to my grandparents and just asking questions. I realized that there is a lot more trust that they naturally display,
Mhm.
especially when things are socially engineered, making it believable. Well,
Right.
yeah, that's
Well, and
me.
you
Yes,
bring
I
up a
said.
good point because part of that is that that particular generation, which we call the silent generation, is
Mhm.
even more trusting than baby boomers. And
Absolutely.
because of the way they grew up. And you bring up a great point about picture how they grew up answering the phone. And even if they might be suspicious about an email because it looks like a suspicious letter in the mail, which they'd
Hmm.
be looking for, the phone was always a personal connection. And so it's like the trust drawbridge comes down when
Yes.
you answer the phone instead of being up until they see who's on the other end. And that's a really good point that I think all of us dealing with seniors in our families and in our lives need
Yeah.
to recognize while we're trying to help them instead of getting frustrated with them not understanding their smartphone or this or that.
Hmm.
So I think that you framed that so beautifully. I just want to call that out.
Yeah, no, thank you. One thing I always try to encourage seniors to do also is you don't always have to be kind of that feeling like you're on the defense and
Hmm.
responding to somebody that sounds authoritative. And what do I mean by that?
Hmm.
What I encourage people to do when somebody calls and they, hey, Mr. Schober, you have a bank account at Bank XYZ, right? We think we suspect some fraud or this or that. We just want to verify a few things for your security so your account's
Hmm.
not drained. If you're a senior hearing that, stop and pause. Ask a few questions. go after them and say, okay,
Right.
wait, you're talking too fast, slow down. Number one, can I have your name again?
Mm-hmm.
What's your phone extension?
Mm-hmm.
What was your email again? When did
Mm-hmm.
this happen? Ask two or three driving questions that puts them on the offense. So they have to think. And you'll notice quickly,
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes, click, they hang up. Why?
Right.
Because it's a scammer. So
Mm-hmm.
it's okay to ask questions. You don't
So
have to divulge
you're kind of
anything.
giving people the tip to you be the authority over your
Yeah.
stuff. Because let's face it, this generation also, went through World War II. And how did we
Hmm.
go through World War II collectively? We respected command and control and authority. If
Yes.
something has to get done, you do it, or you're not going to win the war. And so there, that's built into society, deferring to the President of the United States and the pecking order down, and all of
Hmm.
that is just woven into the whole generation, as opposed to the baby boomers who were more question authority and all of that. And so I think again, another great point to remember when there's senior people are not stupid, and senior people aren't, and there's nothing wrong with them, they're trusting, but they are culturally acclimated, and hackers are using their cultural traits as a generation against them, the same way they do different targets against baby boomers and different targets against millennials.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's a really, really good point to drive home, because everybody's trying to figure out how to help their seniors.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
what are some of the things you're actually seeing trending in elder fraud right now? You and I see these all the time. Let's tell our listeners about what they really need to be looking for right now for elder fraud.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the same old things that just keep improving and they're
Mm,
being
mhm,
polished. They're really built upon the basis, I think, of social engineering that's most effective. But they're probably honing in on things such as voice cloning, which is very effective against seniors, I feel, because
mhm,
again, they hear a familiar voice, there's a level of trust that instantly happens. It breaks down the barriers. They divulge
mhm.
information. So
Right.
be really cautious if you hear just because it sounds like it's, you know, your grandson Johnny on the phone asking for money real quick because he got arrested with some bad kids because they were caught with marijuana or whatever the made up story is. Don't be too quick to divulge any information.
Right.
Stop, ask questions, jot a few things down. Sometimes, even when you say, hold on, let me write this down, the person at the other end, the criminal, the scammer, gets a little nervous because they realize, oh, wait, this person's quick. They're writing a phone number, writing a name, they're jotting information down. They may call someone
Mhm.
else. They may
Right.
provide this to law enforcement or their
Yeah.
trusted son or daughter, whatever the case may be. And I do encourage that.
Mhm.
Have somebody that's a confidant that you can reach out to and share this before you give any information. And say that to the person. Say, hey, I'm not going to divulge this information. I jotted a few notes. I'm going to just check on a few things. I'll call you back. What's your number again? And
Right.
you'll notice how the conversation changes quickly. I
Well,
mean,
again, because you're taking the authority
yes, I take over
position
the
back
conversation.
rather than being the recipient of and deferring to authority, because you have no idea who this person is. And it's great if you're a senior, or, or any citizen, that you're going to respect authority, and, and not be difficult when it's appropriate. And, and you are convinced they're official. But to just defer to anybody who's telling you they're an authority is where you're going to more likely than not get caught up in a scam.
Oh, sure. Yeah. And
Yeah.
you could even do something if you're a little uncomfortable saying any of that or being too much of an
Hmm.
authority. You could even do something with a little more nicety and say, hey, this is really important in case we get disconnected. What's your phone number? Because my phone's intermittent lately. Let
Hmm.
me call you right back. Now,
Right.
suddenly you got their phone number if they give you a truthful phone number, but you'll probably find out they won't give you a phone number. They're
Hmm.
not going to divulge anything that's going to be honest and truthful, but you can read them a little bit better once you ask them a question or put the onus on them to respond. It works
Right.
beautifully to
That's
break down
great.
the barriers.
Now, you were talking about, we were talking about cell phones themselves being a technology, and also talking about, like two-factor authentication, protection, and things like that, which we say regularly on here people need to turn on. There's a whole, guess what? Cyber criminals found out that if they could hack 2FA and MFA and intercede in that somehow, they can then get access, right? So
Yeah.
they, you build, build a wall and somebody will invent a higher ladder. So, SMS 2FA or two-factor authentication, it's still everywhere,
Mhm.
but there's this huge growth in SIM swap
Yeah,
crime right now. And for the SIM cards in people's cell phone, um, most people don't really understand what the SIM swap crime and risk is. Could you talk a bit about that
sure.
and talk about what having good two-factor authentication in this SIM swap crime era means and what do people need to do?
Yeah. I try to always relate it to something that maybe I could identify with. I like car analogies all the time. I learned that from my father. Love cars, so maybe that's why. You drive in a car with no seatbelt, you get into an accident, even if it's not you're the most careful driver in the world, you're probably going to get hurt. If you put a seatbelt on, you have more security. If you get into that same accident, you're not going to get banged up. Your head's not going to hit the windshield, so on and so forth. I kind of liken maybe a seatbelt that we put on if we're driving a car to traditional SMS texting. It works, it keeps you safer, but there's always something a little bit more secure. And what is that? And that's really authenticators. That's becoming more and more popular because they're more secure. Why? Because SMS text has some vulnerabilities with SIM swapping. If a cyber criminal reaches out to your mobile carrier, maybe you have AT&T or Verizon, Sprint, whatever it is, and they basically fool them and socially engineer them and get them to migrate over your phone number, your SIM, to their phone. They can do criminal activity and intercept a multi-factor authentication. When you go to log on to your bank account and it sends you that code, they get that code. They get into your bank account, so on and
Right.
so forth.
So
So
they can
using
now get into your account, reset the password,
exactly takeover. They do
and
account
take
takeover
over.
basically.
And then
Yep.
they're back to draining their accounts, which is what two-factor is meant to protect. So,
Yeah.
so what advice do you have for people about
Well, I think
SIM
using
protection?
using layers of security in the appropriate areas. Now,
Mhm.
I always want to be careful because if I ask somebody, are you using two-factor authentication? And they say, well, no, not really. Start using two-factor authentication. That's probably the first best step, actually.
Yeah.
Why? Because it is very secure.
Right.
It's much, much more secure than just authenticating, hey, here's my username, here's my password. Even though
Hmm.
you may use a real long, strong password, having an additional layer of security always helps. Is someone going to target you through SIM swapping? Statistically, it's actually not that probable it's going to happen.
Hmm.
So I don't want to say, a lot of
Right.
times people are paranoid, oh, SIM swapping, it's the latest and greatest. But guess what? It's not being used across millions of people. It's a
Right.
lot easier to go for the low-hung fruit, the people that are not using any type of layers of security, that are
Right.
not
Now,
using multi-factor
but
authentication.
if you have a lot of assets or you are a target because you're wealthy
Totally
or you're
different.
high profile, then
Mhm.
you definitely need to, think about adding more protection, right?
Absolutely. In fact,
Mhm.
there's other things that I encourage people to do too. Ask yourself this, do you really need to do online banking? It sounds crazy. And everybody's, well, of course, it's convenient, but is it secure? Well, not really.
Hmm.
It's not 100% secure. Every single thing that we can analyze, you can break down. I understand mobile phones. I understand the whole vulnerabilities, even with SIMs and carriers and social engineer. There's a
Right.
workaround and a way around everything, but you can't be paranoid. You still have to function in this world. Um,
Hmm.
so it's finding what works for you. And to your point, a high net worth individual probably, because I've been contacted by many of them,
Hmm.
probably can afford advice and get
Right.
somebody to come in and help them
Hmm.
to reinforce and secure their digital world. And,
Right.
and that's done from the broadband provider, from setting up their Wi-Fi access point,
Hmm.
um, password security, password managers, authenticators,
Hmm.
online banking. Looking at the big picture and securing everything together really does make a big difference. So just
That's
doing any
good advice.
one random act here and there, it'll do something, but it won't
Mhm.
reinforce the whole security. Because
Right.
why? A cyber criminal, if they want to get you,
Hmm.
if they want to get you, if they want to get me, they're going to do it.
Right.
So,
And
we
but
just
you
want
bring
to
up
make
a
it
good
difficult.
point because there's a difference between being targeted where they are intentionally coming after you versus are you just leaving your door open for,
Mhm.
porch pirates coming by and stuff like
Yeah,
that. So
yeah.
that's really good. Now, I love what you said and we cover a lot of the basics regularly about password managers, credit freezes, two-factor authentication, things like that. Additionally, what are two things that everyone should do now to be smarter and safer online?
One thing that really stands out, no one talks about this enough, in my opinion, is your digital footprint. Think about
Hmm.
that for a moment. We're all on the internet. We all use social media to some degree. Some of us too much, maybe. We put too much information out there, where we are, what
Hmm.
we're doing, who we met, the pictures at the beach, so on and so forth. We can actually control our digital footprint. Now there's even software companies that can help manage and control that to some degree,
Hmm.
and of course for a fee. So
Hmm.
security is not always about just spending a lot of money. People are misinformed. The more money you spend, the more secure you'll be. Not necessarily. You can manage your digital footprint. Most of the things you can do don't cost you anything. A case in point, one thing I had some concern with as far as my digital footprint as I began getting targeted, I realized, you know what? If I go on Google and instantly I can go a street view and see my house and see my license plate and my car and wait a minute, those are my kids in the background. And so I blurred out all the images.
Hmm.
You can't see my cars, my license plate. You can't see the front of my house. Now,
Hmm.
does it make it a pain if I have to go into the city for an interview and a limo's coming to pick me up? Sure. So again, there's trade-offs, but it protects my family.
Hmm.
I can also put misinformation out there. What do I mean by that? My digital footprint, one of the most common things for identity theft is what? They know your name, your address, so on and so forth. In there, along with the social security number, is your birth date.
Right.
So every single social media account that I set up has a different birth date for me.
Hmm.
I
They don't,
lie,
all cybersecurity people do that. I think that's a great thing. We need to share that because
and it
uh, any
works.
cybersecurity professional you know who has their birthday out there and you're connected to them on Facebook or anything that shows their birthday, you're going to reach out and say happy birthday. And the joke is it's not really their birthday.
It's
Some are off
never
by
the
a day or
birthday,
two, but
exactly.
what that does is protect when people are calling in, when if a hacker's calling into a bank, and giving the name and the address, last four of the social, which is available for $1.50 on the dark web,
Exactly,
and then the
anywhere.
birthday. But if they get the birthday wrong, the bank's gonna go, wait a minute, what
Yep,
is
red
that?
flag,
Yeah,
hang
red
up,
flag.
call
Hmm.
over.
Hmm.
Exactly. Here's another one that I like to share with people. And a lot of people kind of scratch their head and look at me. And if they said, hey, what high school did you attend? Security challenge question.
Hmm.
Most people put down what high school they attended.
Right.
If you actually put password 123 in instead of the high school you attended, it would actually be more secure. Isn't that ridiculous? So what am I saying
Uh-huh.
is you have usually one, two, three opportunities if you get three security challenge questions to put
Hmm.
in three unique passwords in a sense that only you know.
Right.
I
Right.
mean, that to me is brilliant. There's an opportunity right there in front of you that no one else will know this. And it could be anything.
Right.
It could
The
be a
one difference
simple
being, of
word.
course, if you're in a government site or something where you have to put legitimate, but everywhere else put misinformation because
Sure.
then when that gets hacked, and it will, and it gets sold on the dark web, you're actually playing a prank on the hackers and you're giving them misinformation.
Absolutely.
And then your real information can't be used against you.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it can, and
and
that misinformation can protect you.
it absolutely can. And even common things, and I'll point my finger. We deal direct with the government, and I do have to say their sites are not that secure. Um,
Correct. Correct.
we went through level one compliance recently for cybersecurity, and we had to put into place certain practices
Hmm.
that were more insecure than what we have in place so we can get certified. And I said, this makes no sense. And everybody laughed at the other end of the phone call, and they're like, actually, you're right. What do I mean by that? One of the things, and a lot of even cybersecurity experts argue against this, but I'll still stand my ground. A lot of people say, change your password every 60 days or 90 days.
Hmm.
I don't agree with that at all. I,
Hmm.
I unequivocally say that is statistically, it does not improve that you will not get hacked because you change your password. I think it's actually going to do the converse. The fact that you go in and keep changing that password
Hmm.
will create more opportunities for a cyber criminal to intercept that, read it if you write it down somewhere, or put it into your keychain, your password manager, whatever it is that it gets
Hmm.
hacked and compromised. I have some passwords that have been set up 10 years ago. They are still long and strong and have not been compromised ever.
Hmm.
It's
Well,
because
you bring
up
up a good point.
front,
It's kind of like a safe in your
yeah,
house. the safe in your house is secure as long as your doors are locked and somebody can't get in and jimmy
Yeah,
with the safe. But if you're leaving your doors and windows wide open, then your safe is more accessible, right? And the
yeah,
same thing
more
with your
vulnerable.
password. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
So I love that way of thinking because that also helps people understand just a very pragmatic way to do it. And that's one of the things I love about you and your work, Scott, is you're very pragmatic and practical and very conversational. And unlike a lot of cybersecurity experts, you're not talking down to people, you're doing all that. And you've got great books and great information. So for people who want to follow you and learn more about you and your work, where should they go?
Well, certainly I'm all over the world of social media. Not that I love it, but I have to be there. LinkedIn is probably the number one place I go to, but also Instagram. I do a lot of YouTube videos and education and things like that. I have a
Mhm.
website, scottschober.com. You can go there,
And just
download
for the spelling,
everything.
so for people
Yeah,
listening, it's Schober, and that's scottschober.com.
you
So
got it. Yeah.
that's great.
Yep. You can go there. And then my company is
Hmm.
bvsystems.com. And I
Hmm.
also do a lot of work with Cybercrime Magazine, Cybercrime Radio. There's a 24/7 radio program, and I host that every morning and have a lot of other segments on ransomware. I do a weekly cyber safety show that does it more at a high level, some basic principles and things that you could learn how to stay cyber safe. So check that out at
That's awesome.
Cybercrime Radio also. And again, none of that costs any money. It's just in the background. You can listen to it, absorb it, read, and ask questions. I tell people all the time, I've got
Mhm.
those forums on my website. If you ask a question, it's actually me that responds and provides advice to you. It's not some third party, and I'm not trying to sell you anything or any other agenda that I have. If you want to buy my books, love it. Thank you. Wonderful. And hope you learn from it. That you just go to Amazon. Certainly, you can pick up any of those. And my fourth book I'm working on now is Stolen Plastic. I've been working a lot with law enforcement, Secret Service, financial crimes groups that we're part
Mhm.
of. And I'm learning a ton of things about financial crime and trying to share some of the knowledge that I've been absorbing in tools and techniques, how to fight cybercrime and stay ahead of them to protect your money. So that'll be
That's
called
great.
Stolen Plastic, and that'll be coming out probably later this year.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for that. And thank you for doing that. Thank you for your all your great work in fighting the good fight.
Thank you.
And thank you for your tips. So you heard it, everyone. These are great tips. Think we learned good nuggets. You got some good action items you can do now and everything that you need to get smarter and safer online. And thank you for joining the show, Scott. And
Thank you.
until
Stay
next
safe.
time, stay safe out there.